Welcome to the Training for Translators podcast.
Do better work, earn more money, and enjoy your job with our weekly episodes for ambitious freelance translators and interpreters.
Visit our website at trainingfortranslators.com to subscribe to our newsletter, learn more about our upcoming classes, or read blog post versions of our podcast.
Now here's your host, Corinne McKay.
Greetings, Training for Translators listeners. This is Corinne McKay with episode 7 of the Training for Translators podcast, which is some thoughts on freelance income, both mine and yours. And when I say yours, obviously, I don't know what you earn, but I'm just going to give some thoughts on what freelance translators and interpreters earn in general. But first of all, I'm recording this on November 8th, 2024, and I just wanted to say that it was really lovely to see so many people from the Training for Translators community at the American Translators Association conference in Portland, Oregon last week. I felt really encouraged and energized by all of the interactions there, and I hope you're already planning to come to next year's ATA conference in Boston, Massachusetts, if you haven't made those plans already. So onward with our topic, and I wanted to start with a couple of key principles here. Number one, is it weird to talk about money this openly? I don't know, but it's something that I seem to do for a few reasons that I'll talk about in a second, but that is quite atypical among translators and interpreters. And the reason I remark on that is because I hang out with a lot of freelance writers, freelance content writers specifically, because I do all of my own content for Training for Translators, and I find it helpful to spend time with freelance writers and talk to them about how they work. And I will say that in the freelance writer community, it is actually quite common to talk in a pretty detailed way about income. Here's how much I earn and how I earn it. Here's my income goal for this year or this month and how close I got to it. In one of the freelance writer Facebook groups I'm in, they even do a monthly income roundup. Someone starts a post and then just says, who wants to contribute a comment on what your income goal was and were you, on target, above or below. So I will say that it is atypical for a freelance translator or interpreter to talk in detail about money. And if you find it distasteful, just move on. I've had people tell me all kinds of things that they think it's tacky, that it's in poor taste, that they think that it is an attention-seeking behavior on my part, which is not in any way how I intend it. Most of all, I find it helpful to talk about income. If I am going to take business advice from another freelancer, I actually want to know the context. They don't have to tell me exactly how much they earn and how they earn it, but I want to know, for example, if someone is giving me business advice, what do they mean by high income? We all have different definitions of that. How much do they work to earn what they earn? The purpose is not in any way to brag about how much I earn, to make you feel bad if you earn less, to make you feel bad if you don't need or want to earn what I earn. I actually look forward to the day in maybe 20 years. I'm 53 now, so I look forward to the day when I'm maybe around 70 that I will just work on what I feel like working on and maybe donate the money to charity. I would love that. But that being said, you do you. If you find this whole topic cringy, just skip it. I earned $9,000 in 2003, and that thrilled me to the core. So if you're happy with what you're making, just stick with it. So for a little bit of context, every year since 2021, I've written an income summary on my blog. So if you'd like to read those, just go to trainingfortranslators.com and put the year into the blog search box, and you will come up with those posts. So for a little bit of background, as I said, my first full year year of freelancing was 2003. I made $9,000. And then 3 years in a row, I doubled that. So I made $18,000 in 2004 and $36,000 in 2005. And from there, it was a pretty slow grind up to I finally broke 100,000 US dollars, I believe in 2017. I have to go back and look at my income records. But the point being, here I'm mostly going to focus on 2023 last year. But from 2019 until 2022, I earned almost exactly 110,000 US dollars. Now, when I say earned, what I mean is gross income, but after subtracting subcontracting payments. So that does not include money that I took in and then just immediately paid out to other people, specifically the small number of online course instructors that I hire for training for translators. And during those years, that $110,000 was divided almost exactly into thirds. So I made about a third from translation, a third from interpreting, and a third from writing, teaching, and consulting. And I honestly feel that there would be enough work for me to earn six figures from any one of those business lines. I just personally enjoy the diversity, which not everybody does, but I like that sort of triathlon, aspect. So for 2023, I was not happy with that stagnation for a couple of reasons. Number one, because I worried that it might mean that my own business was stagnating. And number two, because of, rising costs on our own ends, our actual purchasing power goes down if we're still earning the same thing. So my summary of 2023 is it was a good year in my business, but there is always room for improvement. So last year I did a lot of interesting work for good clients. I landed a few good new interpreting clients, and translation was basically status quo. Now, when I set that higher income goal for 2023, I actually exceeded it, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I like to keep some statistics about my business. I'm not a real data person, but I think that numbers are useful. So here's how 2023 went for me. I worked for 22 clients total. That is translation and interpreting combined, and that includes only direct clients and agencies, not individuals. So if I just translated like one birth certificate for someone, they don't count in that total, but I worked for 22 direct clients and agencies. I interpreted 193 days, 103 court interpreting assignments, and 90 conference assignments, of which 165 were remote and 28 were in person. On the training for translators side, I had 633 course registrations, which I believe was up by about 100 from the year before. And I think I already talked a little bit about stagnation and setting that income goal. So I set this income goal of 120,000. And again, that is gross income after subcontracting. And I actually earned 130,000, which I was really happy with. And instead of that one-third division, in 2023, interpreting for me really expanded. My interpreting income almost doubled because I earned $12,000 from court interpreting and $41,000 from conference interpreting, so $53,000 total. My translation income basically stayed the same at $32,000. And my teaching, writing, and consulting also went up pretty significantly to $45,000 because I had some training for translators classes that did really well. I think I had 150 participants in the March Marketing Madness Challenge group, and I did some trainings for outside groups that I got paid to do. Next, I'm going to break down interpreting, translation, online courses, and then my business expenses. But first, let's pause for a quick message from Training for Translators. Greetings, listeners. If you're enjoying this podcast, you should think about taking a class with Training for Translators. You can learn more about that at my website, trainingfortranslators.com. My self-paced 4-week classes, Getting Started as a Freelance Translator or Interpreter in the Age of AI, and Direct Client Marketing Launchpad, run twice a year and are always open for registration. You can also check out our monthly masterclasses taught by me and a select roster of guest instructors. After my recent masterclass on marketing to direct clients and increasing your income, a student commented, "This class was just what I was looking for. It introduced a whole new set of marketing methods and helped me set realistic expectations for myself." I really appreciated that Corinne included both practical steps and concrete examples to support her recommendations. If you'd like those types of results in your own business, hop on over to trainingfortranslators.com and click the Upcoming Classes tab. Welcome back, everyone. Now I'll dig in a little bit to the various income streams that I have. On the interpreting side, when I finished my conference interpreting master's from Glendon College, so that was in the summer of 2021, I did the degree in 2020 to 2021 academic year, got my exit exam results at the very beginning of July. My goal, which at the time I thought was pretty optimistic, was to give myself 2 years, so until basically the fall of 2023, to have my work volume consist of half translation and half interpreting. But in reality, I have had so much interpreting work that I have to deliberately carve out time for translation because I don't want to stop being a translator. Otherwise, I'm going to be exclusively an interpreter because I think for all of us, we'd rather be working than marketing, right? So the easiest thing is to do the work that finds you. And for me these days, I still believe that there is a ton of well-paid, interesting translation work out there, but we have to go find it, right? Whereas interpreting work tends to find me. Particularly if people want a court-certified French interpreter, there are very few of us in Colorado, and in some of the surrounding states, there are none. They don't have any certified French interpreters in some of the states bordering Colorado. So I have a very high volume of incoming requests for interpreting work. In 2023, interpreting just also went really well. A couple of my regular clients sent me a lot more work in 2022, and I will comment that that has continued in 2024. I think interpreting is a very relational business, and that as my interpreting clients get to know and trust me more, I become one of their go-to interpreters. I'm not saying this just happens to me. This is, I think, a phenomenon that happens in interpreting is that it is a lot more likely that you develop dominant clients because it's such a personal business that I think when clients get to like you, they send you tons of work. Now let's look at the translation side. So the big thing that has changed is that I lost a translation anchor client. If you're not familiar with the phenomenon of anchor clients, actually, maybe I'll do a podcast episode of that blog post. Go to trainingfortranslators.com, click the blog tab, and put the word anchor into the search box. Basically, that means a big client. So for me, I define an anchor client as either $10,000 in revenue or 10% of my income. The big difference was that in 2021, I believe, end of 2021, I lost a huge translation anchor client, not due to anything I did, but because they are a large NGO that had a contract with the U.S. Agency for International Development that came to the end of its renewal period. They could no longer renew it, and they decided to focus on Spanish-speaking countries, and they no longer needed French translators. So the thing that was really different for me in 2022 and 2023 is that I did not have a translation anchor client. I made enough money overall, and I was happy with my work volume, but I did not earn more than $10,000 from any one translation client. I'm happy to say that that has changed. I now have a couple of law firm clients that are close to that amount. I'm not sure whether they are technically going to be over $10,000 this year, but they are what I would consider anchor clients. And the thing in 2023 that was also interesting and kind of atypical is that a couple of my translation agency clients had large projects at decent rates, which for me, agency work that I say decent rate is 14 to 15 cents a word. My direct clients are paying more like 20 to 25. I really enjoyed working on those. And I did in 2023 a couple of really interesting asylum application cases where they needed both translation and interpreting. So my translation approach, so I commented on this in my 2023 blog post, and it's still true, that my translation work feels a little more piecemeal than I would like it to. The one thing that I will say is sort of a preview, we'll have to see how this goes, is that I just signed a 2-year contract with a pretty big NGO based in Europe to do their French to English translation work for the next 2 years. So we'll see how that goes. To be reported on probably in my 2025 income wrap up. Now let's talk about online courses. Things for training for translators went well in 2023. As I said, I had 633 people participate in master classes, 4-week classes, and challenge groups. And the thing that I will be talking about in this year's wrap up is that I decided to put a lot more effort into learning more how to effectively market training for translators. And I took a really great content marketing class through HubSpot Academy, and I took an SEO class as well. So I'll be talking about those. And that was part of my, as I said, like my fear of stagnation is not so much that I need more money. Like at 110,000 US dollars, I really was like not worrying about where my next meal was coming from, but I worried that the stagnation sort of indicated like I'm doing what I've always done, which was true. And I've learned a lot of new things in those classes, which I'll talk about in my 2024 income wrap up. So that's a bit about how I earn money. Now let's talk about how you earn money. So according to various compensation surveys, and the two things that I generally look at are the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data on translators and interpreters, and the American Translators Association compensation survey. So if you'd like to look at those, I'll try to remember to put links in the show notes, but just Google BLS, translators and interpreters. BLS stands for Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they do they basically do income data and projections for any occupation that you can think of. So according to both of those sources, the average translator or interpreter in the US makes about 55,000 US dollars. Now, one thing that is sort of difficult, especially about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is that it does not differentiate between freelancers and in-house employees. And that, as you know, if you pay self-employment tax, is a pretty big deal. Now, here is my thought. If you are at that income level and it works for you, stick with it. My concern about that income level is that most statistics that I have read, or statistics isn't the right way to put it, most economic analyses that I have read say that to convert from salaried income to freelance income, you want to use a factor of about 0.4, that essentially you need to earn 40% more as a freelancer to make up for the things that an employer would pay for. Now, this is something that I really noticed because my husband has a salaried job. He works in IT at a government climate research lab. And not only are there factors, so I gave this example at the ATA conference and people kind of laughed, but it's true. Like his employer does not ask him to come in on Saturday mornings and clean the office. But yet, if you work at home and you want your office to be clean, you have to either clean it off the clock, right, at night or on a weekend, or you have to take time that you could be earning money and clean the office. So there are small things like that. And then there are things like your employer contributing to a retirement account. Like at one point a few years ago, my husband actually said, "Oh, like I kind of forget about my, matching retirement account, and there's this big chunk of money in it." Well, that doesn't happen if you're a freelancer. So my only concern about that $55,000 amount is that if we use the 0.4 multiplier, we are down to at least in the $40,000 and perhaps the high $30,000. And my only question there is, would you take a salaried job that paid $41,000? One thing that I feel, and I say this a lot in presentations, is that when I tell people how much I make, when I say, I made gross 130,000 US dollars last year, there are some people who look at me like, what do you possibly do with your time except count your suitcases of $100 bills? And I'm not saying that that's not a lot of money. It is a lot of money. I'm very happy with what I make. But if we use that 0.4 factor, and let's say that is the equivalent of, let's be generous and say that's the equivalent of a salary job making $95,000. If I told you that I have 20 years experience and 2 master's degrees, because I have a French literature master's degree and an interpreting master's degree, and that I had a job that paid $95,000, a salary job, would you sort of fall on the floor like, oh my gosh, what do you even do with all that money? No, that seems like a pretty normal amount of money for someone who has 20 years experience and 2 master's degrees. And one thing I comment to people is my ultimate goal is to earn the freelance equivalent of a 6-figure salary job, and I'm still not there. So my feeling is that if I were earning a freelance income of, say, $55,000, I would personally probably rather do something that is still intellectual, something that still uses my mind, but something where I would find the actual content more interesting than the things that I translate. So, for example, I think I might like to be a travel writer. If I could afford to live off, a salary job of $38,000 a year, I actually think maybe I'd like to be a travel writer. And I think there are travel writers who earn way, way more than that. But what I'm saying here is just if that level of income works for you, stick with it, but ask yourself, would you take a salary job that paid at that level? And one thing that I will say as we sort of get to the end here is, every time that I have given a money presentation in person, someone has come up to me at the end who makes way more money than I do. One person came up to me and said, I'm about to have my first $200,000 year. And this is someone who only translates and interprets. They don't do consulting or teaching or anything like that. Another person came up to me and said, I am about to have my 6th $15,000 month in a row. I've never done that. Like maybe once in a great, great while when I have kind of 2 big windfall projects in one month, I might earn 15,000 US dollars in a month. But for me, that's pretty rare. And this person said, yes, I am on a roll of $15,000 months. So setting and raising your rates is a very personal thing, and that's a topic for another episode. But I just want to leave you with the idea that if you would like to aim for a 6-figure income in dollars or euros or Canadian dollars or whatever currency you earn in, it is absolutely possible. I strongly believe that most of the key ingredient in 6-figure translator and interpreter freelancers, honestly, is business skills. I think having really good translation and interpreting skills is, of course, a prerequisite, but I honestly don't believe that that is the differentiator between people making $60,000 a year and people making $110,000 a year. So there we go. Some thoughts on my income and your income, and I'll be back with my 2024 statistics after the year wraps up. And just as a spoiler alert, I'm pretty much on track. No big news there. This year, for various reasons, I ended up taking more time off than I planned over the summer. And so I had set an income goal of $125,000, and I think I'm going to be more like 120. But basically, things at the world headquarters of Training for Translators are pretty much on track. And I will report on that in 2025. All right, that brings us to the end of episode 7 of the Training for Translators podcast. The podcast is hosted by me, Corinne McKay. The intro and outro were created and recorded by Shadow Studio. The podcast is technologically hosted on Libsyn, and you can visit my website at trainingfortranslators.com to learn more about all of the opportunities that are available for online courses with Training for Translators. Thanks, and talk to you in a future episode.
Thanks for listening to the Training for Translators podcast, helping you do better work, earn more money, and enjoy your job.
To leave a comment, learn more about our upcoming classes, or read blog post versions of our podcast, visit our website at trainingfortranslators.com.
If you enjoy the Training for Translators podcast, please tell your colleagues and friends about it and leave us a review in your favorite podcast app.